All right, welcome back to the Sandyman Show. I'm Sandy Colero. I'm joining you from Kaloya Park here in Lake Country, BC, and it's -7. It's a chilly one. Wherever you are, hope you're doing well and you're warm enough to listen for the next few moments as we explore highly sensitive people with a healthy sense of humor.
This is the podcasting show for the Sandyman Show, where you're the stars of the show. So come on, let's go. Yeah, woo, welcome.
So let's get started. What is a highly sensitive person, or more or less, what's the HSP trait? In this episode, you can expect to find out more about what it is, how to find out if you have it, why it's going to be helpful for us to know that you have it and I have it, and then how to approach this with a healthy sense of humor. So Elaine Iran, she's the doc. She published this book, The Highly Sensitive Person, How to Thrive When the World Overwhelms You. I'm not suggesting that you go out and have to buy this book, but it's been a great resource, which you'll hear me mention in a moment. In an updated version, she breaks down what is HSP into 4 categories, and it's outlined by the acronym DOES, D-O-E-S. So the first D is depth of processing. People with the HSP trait tend to process things more deeply, or if you're more comfortable saying process, you process things more deeply. This is the foundational trait. Some people can do this quickly, some people do this more slowly over time, but it's this depth of processing. So are you tending to find yourself a deeper person? Maybe HSP is part of your life. O stands for overstimulation. There is this propensity to experience stimuli very easily and to a high degree, and so often HSP trait includes overstimulation. E stands for emotional reactivity as well as empathy. So when we go about our days, there is this reaction we find ourselves experiencing emotionally. And I'll just highlight that doesn't necessarily mean expressive emotion, because I've learned over time that there can be very emotional people who do not express their emotions the same way I might, with my ethnic background and all the body language that comes with it. But emotional reactivity is part of this HSP trait, and along with it, she highlights empathy. Finding yourself to be fairly empathic often comes with this HSP trait. And lastly, S, she talks about sensing the subtle. Okay, so it's not a foundational trait, but for me, particularly reading a room, I've always felt like there's things to sense. When someone gets a haircut, it always stands out to me. It's like sensing those subtleties. That's the other trait that she talks about. So DOES, depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional reactivity and empathy, as well as sensing the subtle. Now, some things that really stand out as I just do a very quick overview of the reading so far in her book is this overloaded nervous system that tends to be a part of a lot of our highly sensitive lives. There is this monitoring of arousal. Now, that word can stimulate you in different ways, I suppose, but she talks about over arousal and under arousal. And so it's not the same exactly as anxiety, but this state of arousal is something she really encourages people to monitor and learn how to manage. And I think that's very helpful. Now, I don't know about you, in my working years early on, I really discovered I had some challenges with stress. So over arousal in certain ways could be linked with stress. And chronic stress-related symptoms she lists in her book as the following. And I thought, oh my goodness, as I read through this list, I thought I have had experiences of most of these things. So she lists digestion problems. Those of you who know me, you might say, some days of IBS, which I'm thankful to say are in the past, but that's the first physical symptom of chronic stress. Muscle tension. Do you experience more tension than is common in your muscles? Constant fatigue, insomnia, so troubles with sleeping, migraine headaches, as well as a weak immune system. These are some of the physical symptoms she links with kind of this over-arousal and chronic stress. So the goal as an HSP person begins to form as, how can I achieve an optimal level of stress or optimal tension when it comes to arousal? Because honestly, I have experienced, under arousal where there's like no stress, no timelines, and I find myself sometimes really dissipating and lessened and just sort of like sluggish, slothful. But at the same time, when there's too many stressors, then I can also be fairly unhealthy as a person and become quite irritable. So here's this sort of beginning of what is HSP. And you might be listening going, oh yeah, man, I'm definitely someone who has this trait. And you might not be sure yet. So the second thing to explore is like, how can you know? If you want to know, how can you know if you have this HSP trait? And, here's a few suggestions. I'll tell you, the way I discovered it was, I mentioned in the previous podcast, someone said to me, hey, why don't you work with other highly sensitive people? And I thought, are you calling me a highly sensitive person? And I went online after I'd had this conversation. I just sort of Googled highly sensitive person and then discovered in an interview with this woman, Elaine Aron, that, her experiences she was talking about were very similar to mine. And she says, things I've found helpful have been transcendental meditation, taking time out in the day, like giving myself permission to have downtime. And then the last one was hilarious. She highlights the amount of influence she has had beneficially through spending time with horses. And I have done some equine therapy over the last few years, which I have also found so helpful. And it was like at the horses part where I was like, done. Like, clearly HSP is part of my life. And, it may not be as simple as that for you. So there's a website called hsperson.com. And I think you can go there and you can do a little assessment. A friend of mine who listened to the first podcast, that's where I think they ended up going. They found out, yep, okie dokie, here we are, a new trait I've discovered about myself through maybe some assessment you can take on the hsperson.com website. You could probably just go online, search other blogs, other, Elaine Aron resources. That might help. You could just order the book and then take the little self-test at the beginning of it, answer some of those questions, and just sort of find out. It doesn't mean you have to have all of these areas of sensitivity, but some of you may have a lot of sensitivity in one area and then discover, okay, there's a journey ahead as a highly sensitive person. Now, for me, where I don't want to get too fixated yet on those of you who, have some learnings to share along the way with me. I guess what I'm sharing here is highly sensitive athletes, but also highly sensitive artists come to my mind. And really it's about those of us who are expected to perform or expected to come through for other people. So as I was exploring in that first podcast around being in places that, leadership roles were beginning to be a part of my life, and different types of responsibilities and things I felt pretty uncomfortable with because I had a bit of a caricature of what a leader had to be. I hadn't yet developed my leadership voice. I hadn't explored my leadership style. And that's something that over time I hope to help you with if you haven't yet developed your style. Or if you think you have developed your style and it's the only way that you know how to lead. Because I don't really believe in having a one style fits all situations. But the part that stood out to me, I was in one of my favorite stores. I won't tell you what it is, but I was looking at a little package of electrolytes. because in that Tom Brady book, TB12 method that I mentioned earlier, there's this emphasis on hydration. So I was like, I'm gonna hydrate, I'm gonna get my family hydrated, we're gonna do this alkaline water thing. And so I'm standing in the store and I pick up this product that has a label. Now this is my silly little drawing, which might be backwards on the camera there. But you know, you're in kind of this athletic mindset, and there's these 3 phases. So this is a label of something that says prepare, and then perform, and recover. And on this electrolyte label, it might have been like tabs of some sort, you know, effervescent tabs. I think it was highlighting prepare and recover, you know, something like these will be great after you are at peak performance, whereas this product of ours, this is the one you want to take while you are at, you know, performance, or while you are in your activity itself. And I really started to explore the recover piece pretty highly, and that's something over time I want to share, just that how poorly I knew how to recover, and some of the go-to things people do to rest and to recover. I just think, if we're honest with ourselves, they don't help. You know, they might be easy, but they're not really recreational. They're not renewing. And so the recover piece, I'm finding as I link it to the HSP trait, is becoming very insightful. And so I do hope that we're learning, as we're growing as people, to accept the fact that some of us are highly sensitive. It's about 15 to 20% of the population, according to Dr. Aaron, and it's about the same amount, males and females. And, you know, 30% more feel like they're moderately sensitive. And so I think that there's something for us to accept here. And this trait, you know, I'm talking with one of my kids who's saying it's not necessarily a good thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I kind of agree that it can go a few different ways. And so I hope for you that, you know, in the time that we share together, it can be a positive thing. And not just for you, but ultimately for the influence you have on the people around you. And I think where I'd like to finish today is on this healthy sense of humor part. This fact and sad reality that a lot of us high achievers, a lot of us athletes, a lot of us high performers have very high expectations of ourselves. And we can be very harsh. And we talk about it sometimes as an inner critic, or for me, I think of myself sometimes like a tyrant, I have an inner tyrant who's just brutal with, you know, whether it's perfectionism and other standards we keep for ourselves. But this harshness, I think, needs to give way to gentleness. And I have a mentor friend who I love so dearly who would often say, you know, I think you need to be gentle with yourself. I think you need to be gentle with yourself. And maybe today that's something you can confront harshness, if that's a struggle for you, with just a new measure of gentleness with yourself. And this isn't permissiveness and a license to just be blah and to accept failures and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna gently let it go. You know, and that's hopefully not what you're picking up from what I'm saying here. But there is still a learning of gentleness that I think will help us as we learn to accept ourselves for who we are and begin to focus more on either the tasks in front of us or the objectives we have, both at work and home, or for those of you who are students in your studies. And so, you know, let's beware of this harshness. And, you know, I could get really mad at myself that I need like multi-layers of things because my hands get cold and I have, I don't know how many layers of jackets and shirts on because I'm just prone to being cold. Sometimes that bothers me and I wish it weren't so, but I at least have come to accept that And so I hope you too are on that journey of accepting who you are. And some of this is such a fun liberation when you feel less harsh and insecure about who you are. It's almost like you explore self-forgetfulness when you are around other people or when you're doing things that you love. You just get to kind of lose that preoccupation with how are other people thinking of me and how am I coming across. It's just there's this self-forgetfulness where you can just focus on caring for other people or listening to your kids or your coworkers and their struggles, and just being present becomes more fluid when we're not always degrading ourselves for some of our sensitivities or other quirks. And you know, gentleness always is, I think, capped off well with a smile. And so as you stick with me or go on your journey of finding out more of HSP, I hope that you'll do it with a healthy sense of humor, and that there's permission to not take ourselves too seriously, but you know, we can smile, we can laugh at ourselves and enjoy this great gift that it is to be human and to be human together, to sometimes go down paths that we would never have expected to find ourselves, but to do so with a smile. And I wanted to share with you that I don't always feel like smiling. As positive of a person that I am, I don't always find myself wanting to smile or prone to smiling, but I have learned to just put a smile on my face. Sometimes I do it when I'm driving. I just put the smile on, and it's really not about pretending. It's about sort of training my face to smile and to just get over myself or my current state and to smile. Sometimes in front of the mirror, I'll smile, and there's times too where I just realize I just haven't been feeling the kind of joy that I want to bring into life. And so putting on a smile often kind of shifts my inner mood through that physical practice. And so may you also have a smile. And if you have to put on a smile before you have a real smile, then I hope you do. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. If you would subscribe, that would be really helpful. Like our episode here, post some comments. And I really would like to have a chat. If you're someone who's like, yeah, I got the HSP trait, I'd really like to talk with you. So if you could schedule a little 30-minute chat with me. It's confidential, it's private. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. I'm literally in research mode, and I want to try and make resources for you that would be helpful. So again, thanks. We'll see you in the next episode.
This is the podcast outro.